I've just finished my second week on the keto diet, and today I'd like to share my progress, results, and goals for next week. Hi, I'm Steve, and you're watching Keto Steve-O. So I just finished my second week of keto, and let's take a look at how I did and where I needed to improve and do some more work. So I added this to show how I feel about my progress. I know I show a lot of charts, a lot of data, a lot of numbers, but as I was looking back, it's like I'm not really sharing how I feel, what my thoughts are, just numbers. So I've added this chart, and if you don't like the smiley faces, let me know in the comments. I just was looking for some way to show if I felt good about one of these categories, if I didn't feel so good, if I felt terrible. So just real quick, we'll go through. And for week 0, that's the week before I actually started keto. Week 1 was my transition week into keto. And then week 2, this past week, has been full blown, doing my best to eat the right macros and stay on a true keto diet. So the areas I want to look at and share my progress on and how I feel about my progress are weight loss, fat loss, my midsection reduction, my energy level, my mood, how much hunger and cravings I have during the first week or 2 or 3, and then my sleep quality. And these are all very important to me. These are the reasons I started keto, in addition to controlling my blood sugar better. So week 0, that's before I started keto. That was the week I was in the hospital. That's in episode 1 if you want to take a look at that. And the faces just represent how I personally feel about each of the categories each week, how my progress is, or just how I feel. So for week 0, that's, as I said before I started keto, week 1 is the first week on keto, my transition week. And then this week is week 2. So briefly going through these, the red, of course, is bad, didn't feel good. Green is feel great. So weight loss, there's a little bit of progress there. I felt like from the initial not being on keto to where I am now in the second week that I'm dropping. It's not a lot. It's maybe a half a pound or a pound a week, but it's progress, and that's all I'm looking for. Same with fat loss. There isn't a big drop, but I can see the numbers creeping down the last week or 2. So that's a good thing. I feel good about that now. My midsection has been terrible for years. So of course, before I started keto, terrible. But along with the fat loss, that includes my midsection size being reduced. So I'm feeling good about that category. Energy level, I didn't really feel great, but I wasn't terrible on week 0. But since starting keto, my energy level is through the roof. I thought I would be tired and sluggish and hungry all the time, but I'm not. So my energy level is way up there, and that's awesome. My mood, not so good week 0. I'm sorry, my mood was good for the first week before I started keto. After reducing carbs for the first week, I felt a little, why am I doing this? Not much, but a little. And then the last week, it's come back. It's like my energy level's up, so my mood's good. I feel great. I feel alert, attentive. So better results this in week 2. Hunger cravings, I wasn't too bad the second week. But then the past week, it's been nothing. I think my body's adapting quicker than maybe some folks, but I haven't had the cravings and, oh, I've got to have a cookie, I've got to have some cake, I've got to have something sweet. I just haven't had that, so that's a good thing. And then the only not so good area is my sleep quality. I've always had trouble sleeping and waking up during the night, having trouble falling asleep, and that hasn't really changed much since I've been on keto. So I'm hoping that improves with the diet that I have now, with some of the supplements that I'm taking, and we'll see how that goes. But overall, not much improvement in the sleep quality area. So then moving on to the data trends, these are the 4 or 5 categories that are really important to me, and we talked about this on week 1's update. So the biggest number is my blood glucose. That's the red line, and the dotted line is my target. That's where I'd like to get. So in week 1, we talked about that my blood sugar is all over the place before I started keto. And so week 1, it's improved a little bit. Week 1, it's improved a little bit. Week 2, it's getting even better. There's less real highs and lows to my blood sugar. Weight hasn't changed much, but you can see it's gradually going down, and that's what I want. I don't want to lose a bunch of water weight that I'm going to gain back I want to do a gradual, sustainable weight loss over time. So carbs is the other issue. My carb intake, week 1, I was trending down, so it was higher than this, believe it or not, but my carbs for week 2 are down significantly. So I'm down to about 25 carbs a day on average, and it's going to keep going down. That's my goal. Along with my carbs going down, my insulin's going down. So I was at 75 units per day at the beginning of week 1, and now at the end of week 2, I'm somewhere in the neighborhood of about 40 units per day. So I've almost cut my insulin in half. That is really, really good, because as a diabetic, the less insulin you have to take in, the healthier it is for your body. And those folks that have been on keto for a while know if you aren't a diabetic, every time you eat, it raises your insulin because your body has to compensate for the glucose, the sugar that you've taken in. So it's the same for a diabetic, except I can't produce my own insulin. I have to take a shot. But it's the same principle. The less insulin, the better. And then my exercise, I said on week 1's update, I wanted to increase my exercise time per week, and I've been gradually doing that. So this represents about 15 minutes at the beginning of week 2, and I've worked up to about 30, 35 minutes for the end of week 2. So my goal is to keep increasing my exercise level just over time. So this is a chart that I've shown the last update, and it's week 2, and it's from my Sugar app, and it produces this every week for me, or I can do 3 months at a time or a month at a time, whatever I want. And so we'll just look at some of the important numbers. On the top is a summary for this past week, week 2 for me. So that's January 5th through January 11th. So my basal insulin, which is the background insulin you take once a day, it's averaged 40 units per day this week, which is great. I don't take the bolus insulin anymore. I stopped taking it. That's what you take before you have a meal. I actually have stopped that. I don't need it. My blood glucose average was 96 for this week. My deviation is still a little bit high. It's plus or minus 25, but still, that's a big improvement. 3.5 hours of exercise for this week, and then only 9 hypos and 2 hypers. That's where I go. My blood sugar is way too high or way too low. So improvement across the board in all these areas. And the squares, as I said last update, the red is bad. That means my blood sugar was either high or low. The greens are perfect, and the yellows are borderline. So from last week, there were a lot of reds and a lot of yellows. Now you see a lot more greens all the way down, and that's the way it's supposed to work. And this is the rest of the week. Same thing, there's a lot more green squares, which means my blood sugar is staying right in the middle of where it needs to be. That's very healthy for a diabetic. Just a few reds, but they're not too bad. They're just outside of my zone a little bit, so there's no wild swings like for my week 1 update. So for the most part, very, very good and improving. That's all I want to do, is just improve week over week. So real quick, my accomplishments for week 2. I did a lot of research on intermittent fasting, what the benefits are, the ways you can fast. There's 12-12, 18-6, 24-hour, 36. Some people go a week, 10 days, 2 weeks fasting, or just a water fast. So I'm probably going to start out with like a 12-12, but I'll see how that goes. That would be, I'll talk about that in the next slide as far as my goals for next week. I'm continuing to lower my carb intake. As I said, I'm down to 25 grams per day. I don't know how low I'm going to go, but as long as I can sustain, that's what I want to do. I want to sustain a carb level. If it's 10, if it's 5, if it's 12 carbs a day, that's my goal. But just keep progressing to see where it takes me. It's a journey. So weight and fast loss are trending down slowly, as I mentioned before. That's good. I want it to slowly, I want my fat to slowly go away. I've researched apple cider vinegar and what its benefits are, and I may start taking apple cider vinegar down the road, but I'm still doing research on that. I started tracking my ketone levels and my blood ketone index, which I'll talk about in a future episode. That's a number that tells you how much in ketosis you are, which means you're eating a lot more fat and a lot less carbs. Exercise, I increased it to an average of 35 minutes a day the past week. I want to get up closer to an hour plus a day. So I've got some work to do there. And then, as I mentioned in the last slide, insulin requirements continue to decrease. So as a diabetic, that is a good thing, and I want to keep. as a diabetic, I want to continue that trend of lowering my insulin. So my goals for the upcoming week, week 3, continue to lower carb intake, exercise more often. As I said, I'm doing low impact, so I walk, I climb stairs at work, in the parking garage, in the office. I want to find recipes that meet my goals. I want to have a variety, but I want to be able to cook cheaply and easily. So I'll continue to research recipes. I'm looking at starting a 12-12 intermittent fast next week, and that means basically skipping breakfast and having lunch and dinner, putting your meals that you eat in a 12-hour period, and then after that you fast for 12 hours, and you just continue that cycle. So I'd like to start with the 12-12. Skipping breakfast to me doesn't seem like that big of a deal. So I think I'll start that next week, and I'll let you know how it goes for me on the intermittent fasting. And then last, I want to research apple cider vinegar some more, and maybe start that next week. We'll see how that goes. I'm still looking for a good recipe that sounds good. So those are the goals for next week, and that's my update for this week. It's been a great week. It was better than week 1, so week 1 was tough. But if it was easy, you wouldn't do it. So I'm looking forward to the next week on my keto diet, and thank you so much for joining, and we'll see you next time. Take care.